out there. At the moment, a hard frost again in the morning. Ice is going to be an issue, and there could be some fog patches around as well. Surrounded by areas of low pressure, one drifting down towards France and Spain. This one is drifting down through the North Sea, but just still bringing a few showers across northern parts of Scotland and a brisk wind. So things perhaps icy here, some snow on the hills. The showers are fading further west, but wherever we've had showers through the day, things may well freeze up overnight, and that may well turn things icy. So we do have Met Office yellow warnings in place. For many, it's just clear and cold, -2, -3, even in towns and cities, much lower in rural spots. So a cold start. There could be some fog around on Friday morning as well, particularly for parts of Northern Ireland. That may take a while to clear, but nowhere near as many showers around. A few may just graze eastern England. There'll be a cold wind blowing on some of these North Sea coasts, but for many, the winds will be light. There'll be quite a bit of winter sunshine, and temperatures will be a little bit higher than today's values, particularly in the southwest, 7-8 degrees Celsius. Most places still, though, turning pretty cold pretty quickly through tomorrow evening. Again, a frost taking hold of the chart. We will see some fog on Friday night, more widely across England and Wales. Meanwhile, further north and west, there's some rain trickling in. That is a sign of a change into the weekend, a dull and damp weekend on the west coast of Scotland. Patchy rain for Northern Ireland and a brisk breeze, but it will be turning milder here. For most of England and Wales, Saturday, again, dry, bright, sunny and cold, with temperatures, again, only 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. But signs of things turning milder, albeit with the cloud and rain across the northwest, and that will continue into Sunday. The rain being caused by weather fronts edging in, still bringing some damp weather in the northwest on Sunday, but milder air. The colder conditions persist in the southeast.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Laurence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Good evening, friends. It's 8 o'clock and I'm Laurence Fox. And boy, do we have an Ofcom compliant show for you tonight. Coming up, is net zero costing us the earth? Is the green agenda taking more money from our pockets and causing more harm than good? We'll be debating the pros and cons first. Later on, ding dong, Jacinda's gone. Many will be rejoicing at the news that New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Lockdown Ardern is to step down. Apparently her bank is full of cash. Sorry, I mean her tank is run out of gas. So we will be discussing her term in office. And just to round it all off, Kelvin MacKenzie joins me in the studio to explain how he manages to stay on Twitter when I keep getting kicked off. And if we get time, I'll be answering your questions on Fox on the Spot. And don't forget, perhaps most importantly, that we want to hear from you. Send in your views my way at gbviews@gbnews.uk. That's all coming up after the headlines with Polly Mentalhost.
Laurence, thank you. The top story tonight, train companies have increased their offer to RMT rail workers, including a minimum pay rise of 9% over 2 years. The Rail Delivery Group says that's its best and final offer they have in order to prevent more strikes. It's now urging the RMT to put the offer forward to its members for a vote. And the Prime Minister has been defending levelling up plans today, arguing that the most deprived areas will receive the most government funding. It's announced more than £2 billion will be invested in over 100 projects across the UK. Labour, though, has criticised the plans, saying London and the south east of England will be the beneficiaries of most of the money. But Mr Sunak insists that won't be the case at all.
The North West is the top region. So the amount of money per person living there, who came top? North West. Who came second? North East. And actually, if you look down at the other end of the table, you find places like London and the South East. And the difference is huge. So I think the funding that you're all getting per person out of this levelling up fund is twice per capita what London and the South East is getting. And that should give you guys the confidence that when we talk about delivering levelling up and spreading opportunity across the country, that we really mean it.
Rishi Sunak. Now, 2 retired Metropolitan Police officers have been charged with child sex offences as part of an investigation into a serving Met Chief Inspector who's been found dead. 63-year-old Jack Addis from Perthshire and 62-year-old Jeremy Laxton from Lincolnshire will both appear at Westminster Magistrates Court on February the 9th. The Met says the charges follow a lengthy and complex investigation into a man called Richard Watkinson. He is the 49-year-old that was found dead in Buckinghamshire last Thursday, on the day he was also due to be charged. Now, the actor Alec Baldwin is going to be charged with involuntary manslaughter over the fatal shooting on the set of the film Rust. Cinematographer Helena Hutchins was killed during rehearsals in the US state of New Mexico when a prop gun Baldwin was using fired a live round. Mr. Baldwin's lawyer has called the ruling a terrible miscarriage of justice. And lastly, the King has requested that the profits from a £1 billion a year wind farm be used for the wider public good rather than for the royal family. King Charles has asked for the profits from 6 new offshore wind farms being developed on Crown Estate land to be redirected to those struggling the most. It comes after His Majesty highlighted the anxiety and hardship of the cost of living crisis in his Christmas message. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Now, Laurence Fox.
When our dear friends in the woke community first sat down and began the important process of dreaming up a new religion, they missed out a few crucial bits. But let's not start on a negative. Let's take some time to compliment them on some of their successes. For example, you have to take your hat off to them as to how clever they are at using minority groups to further their blessed calling of the spreading of the hate. Method being simple: find a minority group who may or may not feel oppressed and start to speak loudly on their behalf about how oppressed they actually are. For example, black people. Lump them all in together and start saying that no one thinks that their lives matter at all, regardless of whether they're multimillionaires or living on the street. The lives of all black people don't matter at all to anyone anymore. Discussion over. Fill people's heads with some half-baked statistics, or failing that, some outright lies, to prove that just leaving the house will put them in mortal danger. Get an endorsement from a few billionaire people of colour. Job done. Minority group marginalised. Society divided. Direct racists left to run amok, whilst the rest of us are wandering around looking for something called systemic racism down the back of the sofa. Don't listen to Shelby Steele, Thomas Sowell, Tony Sewell, Kemi Badenoch, or even Morgan Freeman. Listen to the wild mutterings of Nancy Pelosi instead.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice.
Is she not saying, thank you, George Floyd, for letting us use your tragic death as to further the progressive agenda? Anyway, I'll leave that one up to you. Once the BLM drum has slowly receded to become a hum of background noise and all the screens on Instagram have been turned from black to pictures of lunches again, the wokeists move on to the next chapter in the Holy Book, the Book of Trans, verse 1. Similar method, different target. Find some adults who've been quietly getting on with their lives, living as if they're the opposite sex, and start advocating for them. Screech loudly on their behalf, whether they like it or not, and then say that there just aren't enough of them, that their lives don't matter either. Lump them all together with anyone else who isn't heterosexual into a nice little alphabet soup, deny them an individual voice, lob them in a couple of holy months, chest binders, when they're old enough, say 9 years old, send them off to the Tavistock for some puberty blockers, and fingers crossed they don't get osteoporosis or are infertile by puberty. Trans kids' lives matter. Men in dresses in women's safe spaces, society divided, well played. The fact that most of us couldn't care less how grown adults choose to live their lives doesn't matter, and it's just a sign of our own internalised transphobia. So we are all dutifully wandering off to look for our internalised transphobia down the back of the sofa. Shush, Kira Bell. Shh, Richie Herron and others. Black trans kids' lives matter. Thanks for letting us use your childhood confusion and vulnerability to further the progressive agenda. But one of my real faves is the climate game. Convincing everybody that the sun monster is angry and therefore we are all going to have to eat locusts moving forward, never get in a car, freeze and or starve to death in order to appease the sun monster's great rage. It's sort of like a modern version of the Aztecs spending the day sacrificing thousands of people because they had less than an ideal harvest that year. There must be zero carbon! But carbon is what the trees eat. No! We need zero of the carbon! The sun monster is angry! The list goes on and on. I would indeed put a few quid in the Church of England, dispensing with that silly little cross representing the sacrifice of Jesus Christ and replacing it instead with a progressive migraine-inducing flag adorning the altar in every single church over the next few years, as we listen in compelled silence to sermons from Bingo, who uses they-them pronouns about how God didn't really make them man and woman. You can ignore that bit of the Bible. These are indeed great successes in spreading of the hate. But I must say, as is my duty, as an Ofcom compliant person of pinkness, I must point out where the creators of the woke religion missed a few important bits in making a really, really good religion. Most importantly, they forgot to invent a God, which creates some pretty tricky conversations around what happens when the wokist shuffles off their mortal coil and goes for the long sleep. With no promise of heaven or an afterlife, there's no hope of something more tantalising than the hardships of their actual life. Their solution comes in the form of that favourite woke word, zero. If we can have net zero, why can't we have zero death? There are going to be a few challenges, but if you stay in your house, unless absolutely necessary, never see a foreign sunset ever again, never breathe near anyone ever again, shuttle the schools, don't see your family, and are content with your loved ones dying alone in hospital, we can reach zero death. I mean, I know it's a bit of a shake-up compared with what you were used to, but we must all make sacrifices. Another disadvantage of the lack of forgiving God is when someone makes a mistake, as there is no forgiveness, repentance, or redemption in this woke religion. The wokey solution to this niggling problem is more simple. Just cancel absolutely everyone who doesn't agree with everything they say. Not massively great for social cohesion, freedom to think and speak, create art, challenge surging totalitarianism. But hey, that actually fits quite well with what the woke wants most in their sacred mission, the spreading of the hate. So tonight, let's kick off with net zero. Is climate change real? And if so, is sending us all back to the Stone Age the right idea? But first, I'm asking you, who should the woke appoint as their deity? Oh, please email me at yourviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at Laurence Fox. Now, according to the Met Office last night, was the coldest of the year. I know we're only 19 days in, so it's pretty early to be calling it. However, it may not be the first. The cost of heating our homes has increased, and the price cap is due to rise from £2,500 to £3,000 from March. Wholesale gas prices have actually fallen, and yet the cost of energy isn't. Well, how does that work? We are constantly told that green and renewable energy will bring our prices down, improve our health, and save the planet. It sounds lovely. But can it work? And is it working? Joining me to discuss net zero and the cost of living is self-proclaimed King Gammon. Oh, don't say gammon. I don't like that. That's wrong. You can't say gammon. Gammon is racist towards white people. Stop doing it. And the voice of the public, June Slater, and leader of the Climate Party, Ed Gemmell. Ed.
Laurence, very nice to meet you. What an introduction. Gosh, couldn't have seen that one coming.
Bit much? Do we think?
Amazing. Thanks. Definitely. I mean, the woke thing, I definitely woke up. You had me there, I tell you.
Right. Talk to me about climate change, Ed.
Right. Well, I think the big thing to talk about is we should be getting on with it. Look, we let everybody else get ahead of us. We let the Chinese get ahead. We've got the Germans get ahead. Everyone's getting ahead, and we're buying it all from them. And for goodness sake, this is the biggest business opportunity on the planet. Let's get with it. Let's go move forward, and let's make the best commercial opportunity of it. And as you just introduced, actually talk a cost of living crisis and energy crisis. In doing it, what we're actually going to do is solve the energy crisis and solve the cost of living crisis all into the bargain and see an age of prosperity. What's not to like?
Well, the 8 billion tonnes of coal that's going to be burnt next year across the planet?
We have to get away from the burning of the 8 million tonnes of coal.
Tonnes.
And get into actually using the right sources of energy to fuel the commercial. But if we don't get at the front of it, we're going to lose out. I mean, we're seeing targets that are going ahead of us all the time. We've been warned by numbers of others that we were ahead of the game, and now we're not. And if we want to get ahead of the game, see jobs coming from it, see improvements both in our prosperity and in the money that's available to people, we've got to get at the front of the game and not be at the back of the queue. June
Slater, do you agree with everything Ed says?
No, not a word, actually. I've been looking at the Paris Accord quite detailed. China is allowed to continue to use and build coal-fired power stations. It can continue to use coal-fired power until 2070. India has already told the Paris Accord people that it's going to try and kind of get neutral by 2070. The thing is, this goal to neutral for Great Britain isn't that big a deal, because we're only just over 1% to 3%, depending on when you measure it. Now, when you look at the rest of the world around us, you've China spewing out 26%. I'm just wondering what this dot of an island in the Atlantic, when it gets to neutral, there we are, we're just at over 1% to 3%, depending on who measures it. And there's a day going to come when someone reads a graph and goes, we're at carbon neutral. What happens? What's changed then? How is the atmosphere benefiting from that small change? Because the thing is,
where one needs, doesn't someone follow, June? Is there not an argument to say that, if England sets the example, if Britain sets the example, that, other countries will follow?
Well, places like China follow what they want to do. There's nearly, 2 billion people in China. And at Chinese New Year, which is before COVID started, 1.2 billion Chinese made 3 billion journeys across land and sea, internationally and internally. They aren't going to stop doing that because we've got to carbon zero. The more important thing here, and I'm coming at it from a public perspective, is, for instance, let's take Chris Skidmore's recent document. He's launched his Mission Zero because he feels, like Ed does, that we should get on with it and get there and blah, blah, blah. This is a really middle-class argument. And whilst I live like a middle-class person because I've got my heating on, I come from a working class background and I deal with working class, working people all the time. I'm getting messages from people, old couples, who are seriously thinking of ending their life because they can't afford to heat their homes. Now, that's just normal mushies, a woman in Bacup, people that don't matter on this great innovative push for net zero. But these people matter very much because they're entitled to a life. And unfortunately, I see a climate industry that if it was actually serious, I think Ed's quite serious, and I've looked at some of his business plans, and they're quite good ideas. There's no way we're going to get to neutral unless we use nuclear power. What we shouldn't have to do is sacrifice the day-to-day lives of people here on the planet to get to some goal that only half the scientists agree on. People keep saying the science is finished. No, it's not, and I'll show you why it's not finished. On the day that Greta Thunberg made a famous speech at the UN in 2019, that got wall-to-wall coverage. So the science that Ed believes in, and I believe him to be sincere about that, is just getting the publicity. It's not necessarily correct.
Well, let's let Ed get a word in edgewise. I mean, Ed, it's a very compelling argument that people who can't afford anything, we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, are coming to the view that it might be better to end their life. What do you have to say to those people, Ed?
Obviously, don't want anybody to be ending their lives in any circumstances whatsoever. Jean's making an amazing point. I mean, she's absolutely right. And what we've done is we're now, at the moment, we're putting our price cap guarantees on, which is to help people who are in difficulties. Whether we're helping them enough or not is a different issue. But what we're not doing is getting out and solving the problem. I mean, blimey, if we'd taken 60 billion and we put it into insulating homes and putting solar panels on top, we could have solved the problem for about 10 million households in the UK, and they wouldn't be having this issue. So what we need to do is get on top of the problem now, get ahead of it, get some leadership going, which I know that you've been very critical of current government and the Conservative Party for lacking leadership. And let's get forward and push this agenda and make people's lives better. And that's, as June pointed out, that's something we can do immediately.
Is there any chance, Ed and June, I want an answer from both of you, is there any chance in hell that we're going to get to net zero by 2030?
No.
Who wants to go? You go first, June.
No, the simple reason is it's not realistic. And the reason it's not realistic is that world leaders are politicians. Ed's kind of a politician, but he's not pushing the agenda. You cannot expect normal people in this country or any other country to take people seriously who fly a motorcade in to talk to people at COP20, whatever it was, with a president and all his entourage and people using private jets. You cannot expect us to take it seriously when 3,000 to 4,000 people currently sit in Davos using white fluffy towels that are washed every day in a washing machine. Think of the sea. You cannot expect us to take people seriously when they have put masks on the public that end up in the ocean. Got to remember that healthcare workers don't put their masks in rubbish bins. They go in an incinerator in a proper place. We know that masks don't do anything for the transmission of viruses because the virus is too small. So let's get some proper government. Let's get people who are bold enough to come out and say, hands up, we know the mask didn't work. We did it because you were scared of going shopping. The old people were scared. They call us the blue pound, by the way, in my generation. We were too scared to hit the cafes, so let's give them some security. Let's give them a blanket, give them a mask, and then we can see it on a dolphin in the sea 6 months later. That's out of order. Start getting real with the people instead of nanny state in this country. We're all capable of avoiding infection to a pretty good degree.
Right.
We don't need
absolutely right. Let's let Ed respond to that, June.
I think, June, I mean, exactly right when we're talking about all these people flying around the world pontificating on everything. And in fact, I was commenting on Nick Ferrari's show, actually, about whether or not we should have so many people flying into COPs and that sort of thing, which aren't working. So I'm with you on that. We shouldn't be having that happening. It doesn't help us. On the other hand, we've got to get a grip of this thing and we need to get ahead. So we need to get leadership and we need to get ahead. 2030 net zero is actually possible. There is no question that if we set those targets and we let British innovation get at it, if we let British finance get at it, if we let people actually go there and do it, we can make it. Look, at the moment, other European countries are bringing their targets forward in order to usurp our position as leadership on this. Now, we can take control of the decarbonisation revolution and move forward, and we can make it to 2030 carbon zero. And if we do, we will see in the 2030s prosperity. So an upgrade in our standard of living, the opportunity to be at the front and sell our innovations on to the rest of the world.
Well, I mean, to be fair, that is a fairly optimistic thing. But how do you envisage this? You look at an electric car, for example, and it takes up, what, 70% more natural rare earth minerals to build an electric car than it does a fossil fuel-driven car. Well, you know, how many kids are going to go and have to mine cobalt forests in the Congo to deal with that, Ed? Doesn't sound very optimistic to me.
No, I have to say, there's issues in all of the industries at the moment, but if you don't give the right targets, you don't get the right reaction. I mean, if we set a target of 2030 decarbonisation, if we lead the world, then you see one CEO, one managing director going to do it, one set of government, and everybody concentrates their mind on it, focuses, and we move forward. If we've got this wishy-washy, 25, 27 years away, we don't see leadership. We kick it down the road, we try and get elected at the next election without doing anything on it, or as an MD, we kick it off to the next MD, taking on a company's role.
Yeah, or some old people lie in their beds thinking of ending their lives. June, final word to you, please, very quickly.
It's not, we don't see it like that at all. The real people want to go to Benidorm for the holidays. They want to continue flying, and they want the people with the jets to stop. They want a proper government that backs out of their lives, backs away from their lives. New builds, yeah, insulate them, get them on different power structures. But let's stop this business that somehow you think the ordinary people of Great Britain are bothered about getting to net zero. No, they are most definitely not. They are bothered about...
It's not what the stats say.
There you have it.
It's not what the stats say, June. 82% do want to get there, and that's what the stats show.
All right, darlings, calm down. I would like to thank my guests, Ed Gemmell, leader of the Climate Party, and social commentator June Slater.
Thanks, Laurence.
Coming up, New Zealand Prime Minister has resigned, and Liberal tears around the globe are being shed. Back in 3.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Tomorrow on Mark Dolan Tonight, in a world exclusive, Katie Price joins us live to talk fame, love, money, plastic surgery and her hopes for the future.
Get tuned in tomorrow for GB News. I'm meeting up with my old mate, Mark Dolan. It's been ages since I've done an interview with him.
That's Katie Price on Mark Dolan Tonight, tomorrow on GB News.
Hello again. She is popular with the left and the wokies, but seemingly less popular with the rest of our country. With support for Jacinda Ardern leaking like a sieve, there is speculation she jumped before she was pushed. Let's hear some of her lovely lefty wokey rhetoric.
So you basically see it, this is going to be like, well, it's almost like, you probably don't see it like this, the two different classes of people. If you're vaccinated or if you're unvaccinated, you have all these rights. If you are vaccinated...
That is what it is, so yep.
Joining me now is broadcaster and presenter Rex Wilderstrom. Rex, how are the people of New Zealand feeling this evening? Or tomorrow?
It depends very much on who you talk to. I guess the urban liberal left are gnashing of teeth, rending garments. The actual left are saying, well, what a damn good, what an absolute disappointment. Failed to deliver the transformational change that she was elected on, despite having a rare majority under MMP. So it's not merely the right, I think, that are celebrating the fact that she's decided to go. It's anybody who is of the traditional left as well.
And where is her popularity sitting, her popularity rating sitting at the moment in polling?
Well, the first time she's into net negatives. That was rumoured strongly that was going to occur just yesterday. So she timed it perfectly, got out ahead of that, and said no more for me. So there are other things on the horizon too. Of course, an inquiry into her or her government's handling of the COVID crisis that I don't think will be a ringing endorsement. Certainly some things were done right, a lot of things were done wrong. And I think at the end of the day, she was honest in that she's just had enough. And why stick around with this anymore when you've got a lucrative speaking circuit where all the adoring left, urban left anyway, will turn out and pay gazillions to hear you spout off about how wonderful you are.
Well, indeed. It seems that lots of politicians seem to be jumping ship now that the COVID thing is over, certainly all across the world. But I just wanted to, I was looking at some of the things she said. We will continue to be your single source of truth. Unless you hear it from us, it is not the truth. If you have any questions about what you can or can't do, apply a simple principle. Act like you have COVID-19. I want to know how you act like you have COVID-19, Rex. What does that look like? Can you do an impression for me?
Well, at the time, it meant stay inside, communicate with nobody, and if you saw your neighbours doing something absolutely horrendous, like going for a walk, ring up and inform on them. It was, again, it was in response to a question about the prevalence of fake news, and there was a lot of it about COVID at the time. But I think, rather than saying, here's the health department website, as probably most people would have done, she adopted the royal we, and this hubris which has marked the term sort of was very obvious at that point. People, I think, at the end of the day, although it was reassuring at the time, began to realise that here's somebody who, on the basis of a university education and only really political experience, is attempting to tell us how to live our lives in a lot of different ways, and got fed up with it all.
And there's absolutely no whiff of the fact that she's doing a runner totally out of the blue because there's something coming to haunt her?
No. I don't think that those sorts of rumours are true. All sorts of rumours have swirled around her and her partner ever since she took over the prime ministership. But look, none of them have ever come to pass. I think, honestly, her reason for leaving is that she just can't be stuffed, as we say in New Zealand, anymore. And why should she stay around and reap the consequences of what she's done in terms of perhaps an unfavourable finding from the COVID investigation and potentially loss of an election? This way she can go out as a winner. She's being feted as one of the best prime ministers New Zealand has had, and that's not, even if you ignore all the National Party prime ministers and just look at the Labour ones, she's not even the best Labour prime minister we by a very, very long shot. And really her own self-set goals, such as elimination of child poverty, that's why she said she went into politics in the first place, they just haven't occurred. There's been dents made in them, but nothing really of any significance has been achieved.
So what will be her epitaph? Positive, the most positive epitaph of her prime ministership?
I think her COVID response, which is apologised into something incredible, will be what she's remembered. So she will be remembered positively. The actual effects of that on the country, on the economy, on many, many people, on mental health and a whole range of other things, and certainly what came after COVID, her handling or mishandling of the economy and her failure to meet her own self-set targets, will be, forgotten as history tends to be very kind to most people.
Rex, thank you very, very, very much for enjoying me. Right, coming up, staying down under. Australia is set to pass a law allowing children under 16s to legally change their gender. It never stops, does it? Back in 3...
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hey, so earlier in the show, I asked you, who should the woke appoint as their deity? Let's see what you've had to say. Bob says, the deity of woke is obviously St. Greta of Thunberg. This is true, Bob. I misnationed Greta, saying that she was from Norway the other day, and I had to say 100 Hail Gretas this morning to make myself feel better. Susie says Jacinda Ardern, our favourite from the show earlier, or Justin McBlackface Trudeau. Yes, they are good contenders, but I think David Attenborough. That's just me. Email your views at gbnews.uk or tweet me at Laurence Fox. Now, it has been reported that in the state of Queensland that they've used Scotland's gender reform bill as their risk assessment. Not a good idea, for their very own gender ID bill. But even after Scotland's was halted by the government, Queensland will still be pushing ahead with theirs. Interesting strategy. Currently in the state of Queensland, a person must go under gender reassignment surgery before they change their gender on their birth certificate. Much like Scotland's bill, it'll allow children to change their gender, except Queensland have taken this step further and will allow kids as young as 12, oh my lord, to change their gender. Not only this, but if a parent doesn't give permission for their 12-year-old to change their gender, said 12-year-old can take them to court. Oh, please, make it stop. I need to get off this world. What is going on? Here to enlighten me is Alexandra Marshall, online editor of The Spectator Australia. Alexandra, good evening. Please tell me what's happening and how we stop it.
Well, thankfully, I'm in the state of New South Wales, so it's not happening in my state, but we are watching the crisis of sanity in Queensland above us. Basically, what happened is they trialled a similar version of this law down in Tasmania, and it passed because it's Tasmania. And the craziest part of this law you didn't actually mention, which is that parents don't have to register a gender for their children when they're born, and they can list their mothers and fathers as whatever they want. So they can have two mothers, two fathers. Basically, our birth certificates are now worthless. They are fictional documents. And so what we've got is a group of women who are quite concerned about basically the future of women's rights in Australia, particularly in Queensland. And so they've been trying to lead a campaign to have this bill taken out. However, the person who put the bill in was the Attorney General, Minister for Justice, Women and Prevention of Domestic and Family Violence. Her name was so long I had to write it down. And she is staying steadfast. She has not learned the lesson from Scotland and the UK. She's going to keep the bill.
But look, I can understand adults having the right to live their lives as they choose. But, it is a tricky question. Where do we draw the line in when someone wants to identify in a different way?
The biggest problem is this is a legal document. So this records what you are. It's not an identity statement. It is a record. So if there is no difference anymore between a biological male and a biological female inside Australia law, how can you protect things like women's sport when that is a definition used for competition, and also for access to things like women's domestic violence shelters and all manner of other things? Now, my experience in Australia is I've never seen a woman in a change room or a bathroom complain if a genuine transgender person enters, or even if a dad accompanying his very young child comes in with all apologies. What we have a problem with is when women are placed in danger. For example, if someone in a 6 foot bloke in fishnets walk in, well, then the women are going to circle. And this is what we are seeing now, is this identification taken way too far. So what women are asking for is some level of commitment from the transgender community to show that they really have tried to live as a different gender, rather than self-ID, which is basically whatever your gender you feel like on whatever day. And that does endanger women's rights.
Miriam Cates, MP in the UK, said in Parliament just the other day that there is an innate, not fear, but intimidation between men and women, and that is why single-sex spaces have been created for women, and she was shouted down by a man, a male MP. What is the public opinion about this bill in Australia?
Well, first of all, I'll say that women see most men, the vast majority of men, are very good people and they protect women. What we are seeing is a minority of men who are looking to usurp the rights of women and endanger them. So women in Australia, the public opinion is hugely on the side of women's rights. I mean, we spent over a century fighting for equality and for protection in our own spaces. So no, there's no groundswell of support for this bill. The problem is there's no way to stop the bill from going in because of the unique way that the Queensland Parliament's laid out at the moment. We can't stop it. We're not being asked if we would like it. The Queensland government's in charge and they can basically just continue to push this through. So all we have is the power of outrage, and for Labor to feel like perhaps this isn't the best idea. That's all we really have.
Well, that's depressing. But, you know, our thoughts are with women and men across the country, across the world who want to keep this place sane. So, Alexandra Marshall, thank you so much, online editor of Spectator Australia. Okie dokie. Coming up, Kelvin MacKenzie joins me in the studio to moan about something.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
We are GB News, the People's Channel. Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Oi, oi. It was in the late 1970s when coordinated strike action prompted the then editor of The Sun, Larry Lamb, to run the infamous headline, Winter of Discontent, which is now so painfully platitudinous. But now we find ourselves back in those dark old days with coordinated strike action and stronger than ever. Perhaps what Mr. Lamb missed in that headline, which he appropriated from Shakespeare's Richard III, was the context. Shakespeare wrote, "Now is the winter of our discontent made glorious summer by the son of York." When he wrote the winter of discontent, he meant discontent is coming to an end and giving way to a glorious summer. Well, that certainly doesn't seem to be the case for us at the moment. Nurses from 73 trusts are striking in February, so are thousands of train drivers, teachers, ambulance workers, bus drivers, etc. The list goes on. I can't see any glorious summer on its way, so I think we need to find a new headline. Well, who better to do that than another former editor of The Sun, Mr. Kelvin MacKenzie. Kelvin, how dare you say this about strikers? You don't become a fireman to go, you run towards danger. These people must find it impossible to sleep at night, knowing that there are going to be people whose lives are in danger. How dare you say it?
I think the issue. What do you mean? Why am I critical of them?
Yeah.
Why am I critical of them? I'm critical of them because they know they have power over life and death. Nurses, life and death.
My mum was a nurse.
Okay, ambulance workers, life and death. They're prepared to use my mother lying on a bathroom floor with a shattered hip to say, actually, Category 3, I'm afraid I'm going to leave her there and take your chance, or try putting her on a couple of boards and bring her into hospital yourself. They do say that. They turn round and they tell you, we are having no 999 call handlers. They say that. That's part of
Why are they in this place? When a kid turns around and goes, I want to be a fireman, or a nurse, or a doctor, whatever. When they're young, they go, that's what I want to be when I grow up. And we all go, good on you, son. And actually, some of them end up doing it. And some of them end up knowing that they're going to be paid sod all to do it in the first place. Less than Aldi in the case of firemen. But just hear me out.
Okay.
Their natural gut instinct is to run towards danger. It must be appalling for them, personally, to have to not do it. What is the other side? You devil's advocate.
It's not. They obviously don't find it appalling. They seem to have a very good time on the picket lines. They seem to
cynical.
They seem to adjust their schedules so that they just, by the way, seem to be able to get all the money back. Where does my visceral dislike of organised labour, when it's used against, they've taken the taxpayers' money and they're using their job against you like that. And I'll tell you where it happened. Happened actually when I was in the print business, actually at The Sun, where I saw a shocking collection of thugs actually squeezing the cojones out of the management every night. It's a minute-to-minute business. Now, what do I see now? Some 30, 40 years later, what do I see? I see the RMT saying, we won't do this, we won't do that, we won't do the other, despite the fact that the taxpayer is funding their losses and their pay. And when they're asked, look, do you mind if you just do this about the guards? Do you mind doing that or whatever? Right? They say, no, we're not going to do it. Why? They can afford to be bloody-minded because they've got us by that. And that's what I object to it. And the idea that having this discussion today where nurses are on strike, I agree, a terrible thing, and we've got ambulance men on strike, and they're going to do it on the same day, crippling the very NHS, which they spend so much time saying is at their heart.
Well, hang on a minute. I don't think that actually is those people that say the NHS is at the centre of their heart. I think most of the people that... When my mum fell down the stairs and had a gash like that across the top of her head and she was taken to hospital, I got the most amazing treatment you would ever received. I don't think those people are the people that are annoyed. I think it's these little Twitter activist doctor morons who sit there and go, this is what the NHS thinks, this is what we think. But actually, on the front line, there are people there who are not getting paid very much money, who are really suffering, and someone actually needs to stand up for them. Mick Lynch can do one, as far as I'm concerned. Sorry, that's my thing. You know, drive your train, you get paid enough money. But seriously, we've got to separate out these frontline workers in real stuff like fire, health...
OK, I do buy some of that.
Good.
Not while there's a state monopoly, right? The NHS, right, even Labour, Labour, West Streeting, by the way, running ahead of the game, running ahead of the Tories actually on this, is basically saying this is not working anymore. We have to look at it in another way. And you know what we're going to have to do? Those that can are going to have to pay. And do you know what would happen then? Actually, you're right. The doctors, those A&E nurses, those really, right, their money would go up. At the moment, we're trying to run a service for an increasing number of people, which our nation can't afford anymore. And I think we're going to have to deal with that. But look, OK, let's talk about the teachers then. OK, so look, we've spent years, 2 years, without our children being educated properly because of COVID.
No,
so what do they do?
It's not because of COVID, it's because of the ridiculously stupid government rubbish policy.
All right, so they made a mistake, but I don't think the teachers would have turned up anyway,
they were clapping like seals.
Right, so, right, you take them. The starting salary as of September, under this deal at the moment, right, is 30,000, will be 30,000 a year. Look, in London, not a king's ransom. Totally buy that.
It's not a survivable ransom.
But once you get out, you're heading towards the other side of Norwich or you're heading towards Lincoln or whatever. In the first year, 30 grand, pretty good, right? So the question is, the average earnings is about 40,000, right? They get 6 months. If you go sick a teacher, you get 6 months' money. OK, you get 6 months before your money has to change, and you get your pension is nearly 24% as the employer's contribution. In private industry, that same pension is 4%. Look, all I'm saying is, look, at the end of the day, it's not a bad job, but we're going through a shocking run over inflation. Somebody has to go like that. So average earnings in the private industry have gone up 7-odd%. At the moment, in the public sector, it's about 2%. That is going to change because the RMT deal that's just announced today, whether it is a deal, I don't know, looks as though it'd be 9%. And I reckon around about 7.5% is when the deal is going to be. 7.5% is going to be less than 10% and actually job done. And a lot of the heat will come out of this. I'm not in favour of them going out on strike. I don't like the way that the individual union leaders are all going, well, you going out on strike. No, we're going out on strike. We're going to demand more than you, and all the rest of it. And they're using their people as battering rams, often for politics.
I think there will be many across the country who are sympathetic to you, but I just, for some reason, usually I'd be completely on the side, but for some reason it gets my goat. Anyway, thank you, Kelvin. Please, can we do this more often? Right, it's now time for you putting me on the spot, Fox on the spot. Let's hear what you got to ask me. Lofi, what are you going to ask me? Why are your running times absolutely poor? Hang on, mate. January the 1st, 19 days I've been running for my own mental health, and I'm now down to 24 minutes and nearly 23 minutes. I'm exercising. Give me a pat on the back. David wants to know, Laurence, what can the Tories do to get re-elected for another term in office? Be Conservative. Idiots. Not you, but them, the Conservatives. Right, Belinda asks, what's the problem? I might get Kelvin in on this one. What's the problem with being woke? Can you define the term for me? Kelvin, what is woke?
Well, woke is actually a very dangerous game in the media. If you are anti-woke, you look at where Clarkson's career is today.
Look where my career is. I'm sat here, mate. I used to be an actor, innit?
Actually, it's a good point. It's time to go. Thank you very much. It's the Kelvin MacKenzie show. It's taking over from Laurence Fox. You're quite right. It is a very dangerous area. And if you're working in a company and you are, in any sense, a boss kind of guy or woman, and you act in some way that is anti-woke, expect there to be a problem at an employment tribunal with somebody in the corner.
But we need a definition, Belinda. Right, here it is, Belinda. The definition of being woke, for me, is living your life in a way which is only the temperate. It's without any meaning whatsoever. You don't think about other people, you just pretend to think about other people. You live your life defined by your words and not your actions. And I was always taught to judge people by what they did and not what they said. So woke people with their little black screens that they throw up on Instagram so they can feel better about anti-racism, all of that one, can do one. Anyone who virtue signals is a wokist bore-off. Do one. Don't care. Goodbye. Anyway, I think I'm doing well on this, Kel. Do you reckon?
I think it was a good question.
It was a good
question.
It was a good question.
She was like the answer.
Anyway, that was it. That was thank you to all my guests tonight. It was a bit woo. And thank you for joining me. Up next is Dan Wootton. Dan, what have you got for us?
Lawrence, good evening. Of course, I was watching what you were saying earlier about Jacinda Ardern, but if you were watching the rest of the mainstream media, you would have think the Queen of New Zealand has just stepped down. What people are missing, Lawrence, is she's been pushed because she knew she was about to be catastrophically defeated in a historic election because Kiwis woke up to her COVID authoritarianism. So I'm going to have a lot to say about this at the top of the show.
Well, that's great news, Dan, and I won't be sobbing for her loss. Anyway, that's all coming up after the break. Don't miss it. See you next week.
Good evening, I'm Alex Deakin, and this is your latest weather update from the Met Office. Temperatures tumbling once more out there. At the moment, a hard frost again in the morning. Ice is going to be an issue, and there could be some fog patches around as well. Surrounded by areas of low pressure, one drifting down towards France and Spain. This one is drifting down through the North Sea, but just still bringing a few showers across northern parts of Scotland and a brisk wind. So things perhaps icy here, some snow on the hills. The showers are fading further west, but wherever we've had showers through the day, things may well freeze up overnight, and that may well turn things icy. So we do have Met Office yellow warnings in place. For many, it's just clear and cold, -2, -3, even in towns and cities, much lower in rural spots. So a cold start. There could be some fog around on Friday morning as well, particularly for parts of Northern Ireland. That may take a while to clear, but nowhere near as many showers around. A few may just graze eastern England. There'll be a cold wind blowing on some of these North Sea coasts, but for many, the winds will be light. There'll be quite a bit of winter sunshine, and temperatures will be a little bit higher than today's values, particularly in the southwest, 7-8 degrees Celsius. Most places still, though, turning pretty cold pretty quickly through tomorrow evening. Again, a frost taking hold of the chart. We will see some fog on Friday night, more widely across England and Wales. Meanwhile, further north and west, there's some rain trickling in. That is a sign of a change into the weekend, a dull and damp weekend on the west coast of Scotland. Patchy rain for Northern Ireland and a brisk breeze, but it will be turning milder here. For most of England and Wales, Saturday, again, dry, bright, sunny and cold, with temperatures, again, only 4 or 5 degrees Celsius. But signs of things turning milder, albeit with the cloud and rain across the northwest, and that will continue into Sunday. The rain being caused by weather fronts edging in, still bringing some damp weather in the northwest on Sunday, but milder air. The colder conditions persist in the southeast.